So Egypt was conquered by the Hyksos and were ruled by them until the Egyptians rose up and drove them out in 1550 BC. Now, the architecture of these cities which they built, all of the cities they built, the same architecture. They used what we call cyclopean masonry. Cyclopean masonry, the word cyclopean taken from the Odyssey, when Odysseus and his men were trying to escape from the Cyclops picked up tremendous boulders and threw them at them. Well, cyclopean masonry means gigantic stones, uncut, undressed, just boulders as they are, and with these boulders they built the walls of their cities. Now, if you take these big boulders, you put one alongside the other and then those on top, these gigantic boulders, you build a tremendous fortification, a very strong fortification. This is the way they built their fortifications. Then you built the walls with these gigantic boulders, and then on the outside you build a dirt slope, and that's the way you defend the city. Now they built that, and the same architecture has been found in several places along the road from Egypt through the land of Israel and over into the Aegean area. I was involved in an excavation of a town in northern Israel, in the east of Nahariya. If you've been to Israel, Nahariya is on the seashore. 3 miles east of Nahariya is a kibbutz called Kabri, the tremendous avocado plantation. And they were digging to bring in our irrigation pipes. And of course, they came across these stones, a raid, and the archaeologists were called in. And we were digging there for 5 years. We found tremendous, interesting, fascinating remains of that period, 1750 BC, 1730 BC. Same architecture, and other things which showed that it was related not only to the capital their capital in Egypt, but also to the island of Crete, the palace of Minos and Knossos. So that was all part of it. Things that were found there in Tel Kabri are identical with some of the things that were found in the palace of Minos and Knossos. And so this is all of that period, 1730 BC, and this empire of the Hyksos, or I call it the Amorite Empire of the West, lasted for about 200 years, from 1730 to 1550 BC. Now, during that time, they ruled, and Manetho gives them about 3 dynasties. That is, they had 3 different families ruling over that period. But in the Egyptian records, from 1730 to 1550, the Egyptian records are absolutely blank. In other words, the Egyptians would not even write about that period. It was the great humiliation, the great disaster. They wanted to block it out of their memory, which is interesting, but also futile, because in the course of time they had to reintroduce them into their history for a very important reason. So you see that you can try to throw things down the memory hole, and you can try to change the record, but after a while it comes back at you and you have to reaffirm it. You know the story of the memory hole, don't you? In the novel 1984 by George Orwell, anything which had to be eliminated was thrown into the memory hole, which means it went down into the ovens. You know, the Soviet encyclopedia was never finished. You know that? The Soviet encyclopedia was never finished because they always had to revise and change articles, so they would take out and rewrite them. And when you're trying to falsify history, you're in trouble. As my father used to say, if you want to be a liar, you have to have a very good memory. And of course, they couldn't ever finish the Soviet encyclopedia because they were always changing. But the Egyptians tried to eliminate this period of 180 years from their history, and ultimately had to recapture it in order to justify actions that they were taking, which they had to justify by going back to the Hyksos invaders. But we'll talk about that later.